Something we don't talk about often enough is the wounding and the trauma and, quite honestly, the PTSD that many of us suffer from our education, from dental and medical school. I know. And it's such a prevalent component of so many people I talk to. So many people who went through residency programs that were punishing or painful, or even in dental school, medical school. These things that we suffered through, and I use that word not lightly, that we think we left in our past, but slowly creep up again later in life, later in our careers. And that's what I'm focusing on in this episode. So if this is something that you've definitely noticed, today I'm going to be giving you the cheat code to your healing and a little bit of insight into exactly what's happening, realizing that your past gets to be a lesson, it's not a life sentence. Hello, welcome to the Business of Happiness podcast. Hello, I'm your host, Dr. Taryn MacCarthy, and today is going to be a phenomenal day. Here we go, my friends. Who you were, what you've experienced, has no bearing on what you are capable of and on what is possible for you. Let that sink in for a moment. Let that sink in again. Doesn't matter what you went through, what your story has been, who your parents were, what your upbringing was, what you experienced in medical and dental school, what you experienced in terms of bullying as a child, all of that has zero bearing on what is possible for you. Did I just blow your mind? Did I just blow your mind? Let that sink in. Let that be the truth, because it is. It is. I think so often we get limited by what we think our experience was, or even what is true. I mean, did those things happen to you? Yes. Did it hurt? Yes. Does it have to be a limitation? Absolutely not. This morning, it is pouring outside. It is absolutely torrential downpour. You know the rain that comes sideways? The rain that when you put on your raincoat and an umbrella, the umbrella turns on you and your pants get soaked no matter how much you think you're keeping yourself dry with your raincoat. That's the kind of rain that we're experiencing this morning. And I was doing my meditation and my usual morning routine. So I get up early. I usually, get myself some hot water with lemon and cayenne pepper and cinnamon. That's my morning drink of choice. And let the dogs out. This morning I stoked the fire and the dogs started barking. They don't want to be out there either. It's raining. It's wet. They're not happy. So the bark starts. And I'm used to this. So I don't want them in because I was going to be meditating. And then after my meditation, I was going to do my yoga. So the barking was going to happen. And I'm very practiced at just allowing the barking and sitting in my meditation. And the barking would not stop. The next thing, my husband almost pleadingly said, "Please let the dogs in." I could hear the anger, the frustration in his voice. "Can you just let those dogs in?" And I said, "They're fine. They're dogs. There's a covering. There's a porch. They can stand under the porch. They're fine, honey. I just don't want them in here while I'm trying to meditate and while I'm trying to do yoga." And he said, "You know what irritates me so much about that dog barking? It reminds me of my pager that used to go off in residency with that unrelenting beep, beep, beep. And every time I hear that pager go off, or I heard that pager go off, I would feel my heart rate ramp up and cortisol rush through my body, and I was on high alert because it always meant there was something urgent I needed to attend to." And he said, "And those dogs barking are just eliciting that. I can feel it in my body. I feel like stressed out. And I hate to start my day that way." I was so excited when this happened, of course. My husband's feeling stressed out and I'm lighting up because of the awareness that he had in that moment. See, his mind is telling him there's an emergency. Why? Because his body is reacting to the unrelenting barking. Isn't that so interesting how our minds and our bodies work? Before he even has the thought that there's something dangerous or urgent, his body's already releasing the cortisol, already rushing with adrenaline, already heart rate pumping, heart rate beating faster, breathing getting shallower. His body is in fight or flight before he even has the thought. He doesn't even know what the urgency is. But his mind is saying, urgent, urgent, there's something that we have to do. Urgent, urgent, react, do something. It's so fascinating how these experiences from our past live in our bodies at a cellular level, live in our bodies at a place that's out of our conscious awareness. All of a sudden, we just feel something has to happen. And isn't it so fascinating that Killian was able to identify that that was unique to his residency? And I'm not sure which component of his residency this started to create a story for him, but there was urgency and he had to react quickly. Recognizing that limitation is a huge step. I think at the time he didn't yet connect that it was a limitation, because the limitation is not feeling the way you want to feel, right? Right now, I'm enjoying my morning coffee. I'm getting ready for the day. I want to have a positive outlook on the day. I want to go to work with, optimism and enthusiasm, and yet I'm feeling totally stressed out. That's recognizing limitation. Awareness is amazing. Awareness is such a superpower. When we get in touch with our bodies and recognize, whoa, something's off. I'm feeling so stressed out right now. It doesn't even matter what it is. The awareness is the biggest thing, because awareness is a huge step in growth and development and in creating the life of your dreams. Awareness means there's a connection to your body, a clarity of a feeling, a clarity of the way you feel. Oh, right now I'm feeling stressed. It almost requires you to be a third person observer. Whoa, isn't that interesting? My body is feeling stressed. When we become the stress, we react. When that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm feeling really stressed right now, I am stressed, I am a stressed person. When we own it, that's the limitation. But the awareness of, whoa, my body's feeling stressed right now, that's the superpower. Having the awareness is a huge step. Understanding the origin is another huge step. Connecting those two. Wow, the dog barking is reminding me of the pager beeping. Once again, it requires us to be a third-person observer of our own selves. Isn't that so interesting? That dog barking is totally reminding me of the pager beeping. Listen to that relentless woof, woof. I'm probably triggering some of you right now if you're listening to this. But isn't that and oh my gosh, when we start making that connection, that correlation, we get to extricate ourselves from the story. So the story would be, there's an urgency, I got to react, I got to do something right now. Whatever you do, just let the dogs in, right? Isn't that so interesting, that emergency reaction that we have? But when we pull ourselves out and realize, oh my gosh, this is just reminding me of that moment in time. Now I see there's actually nothing in this moment to be stressed out about. Everybody's fine and safe. It's just my body reacting to it. It's the cellular reaction that our bodies have without our even processing it intellectually. It's literally going through your amygdala and initiating that fight or flight stress response. And it's so fascinating to be able to look back and find out where it comes from. And the power of finding out where it comes from, by the way, lies in recognizing there's not any truth in the urgency in the moment. Okay, let me try and explain a little bit more. When we can identify the origin, we can realize that that is just the story our body is holding on to. We can pull ourselves out of the story and say, that was the story in the past. It does not have to have any bearing on my current situation or my future. When I was in residency, that beeping, paging told me there was an urgency that I had to react to immediately. By the way, that's another whole story that we can go into another episode about when you perceive an urgency, because, guys, there's 99.9% of the time there is no urgency. There is always time to pause and regulate your body and your nervous system so that you can stay in the right place to have the most effective, empowered response and not just to be reactive. I'll save that for another time. Right now, we're looking back and we're saying, oh, back then, that's what that cadence of sound meant. Made so much sense. When that beeper went off, that pager went off, I needed to be on high alert immediately. And guess what your body did? Exactly what it needed to do. But right now, in this moment, my body's just reacting to the cadence, which was a learned response, a learned reaction because of it happening so many times and the emotion attached to it, right? So the repeating it, making it happen on a regular basis allowed your body to learn it, but also the emotion around it. We remember things that are more emotionally heightened, right? So the emotion around that experience embedded it in your body even more. Okay, so fast forward to today, we can recognize, wow, it's not the same thing. My body's responding, but now I get to help myself and teach my body something new. You know, I keep coming back to the awareness, because imagine now if every morning you had as your wake-up alarm on your alarm clock a very repetitive tone, Imagine if that same response in your body was happening every single morning to wake up. And now we wonder, why am I stressed out all day? When we're starting the day with a fit of stress, with an instantaneous fight or flight response in our bodies, telling our bodies, emergency, alert, get up, do something fast. Can you imagine a more toxic way of starting your day? Don't we all want to start our day from calm and peace and serenity? Don't we all want to start from clarity? Isn't that so interesting? That maybe that same embedded, embodied response in my husband might be happening if he had an alarm that did that. Luckily, that's not the way he wakes up, but isn't that so interesting? So now we understand how understanding and recognizing the origin is also an enormous step in our healing, because it allows us to extricate ourselves from that story. But where most people stop is when they recognize the story, the pattern. They recognize the origin of the story. That's where most people stop. They say, oh, isn't that interesting? It is like my residency program, and that makes so much sense. And let those damn dogs in. But here's the thing. Our past does not have to be a life sentence. Our past does not define who we are or what we are capable of. Our past gets to stay in the past when we have that realization. This does not mean that every single time a particular cadence or tone goes off in the world, that every doctor and every dentist goes into fight or flight and they can't think clearly or process rationally. It doesn't mean that every time we hear that repetitive tone, all doctors and dentists have to slip into a state of urgency. Imagine if every single one of us did this without going to the next step. The next step is releasing yourself from that identity. And that is the healing. When we release ourselves from that story, from that urgency, from that connection to whatever is activating us, that is when healing starts. So what does that look like? Well, this is sometimes when we need a coach's support or a therapist's support. And it's most definitely something we can each do for ourselves. It starts with, and here's the really fascinating part, our bodies. We think that positive affirmations, using our intellect is the way to go, but it has to start with our bodies. In the moment, creating safety in our bodies. Because the reaction is happening in your body. When the dogs are barking and you're hearing that sound, your reaction is happening in your body. There is no urgency. There is no threat, but your body thinks there is. And that cascade of hormones and neurochemicals has already been kicked off. And that's why we start with the body. So this is something that I teach, by the way, in my Radical Happiness for Practitioners program, which is to support you in all the things so that you can be the happiest healer, happiest doctor and dentist that anyone ever knew of. You could be the happiest healer that you've ever met. How? Because understanding the body for yourself, not just for your patient. But I digress. I'm giving this to you right now in this episode so that you can use this starting today. We start with our bodies. So having the awareness in our bodies is such an important component. And if you're right now thinking, I have no idea what you're talking about, you are not alone. There are so many doctors and dentists out there who are completely disconnected from their bodies. We call ourselves neck uppers, right? Because we literally forget that we have a body, forget to even pay attention to our bodies. We push through and push past so many things. We push through exhaustion. We push through feeling sick. We've pushed through pain. We push through stress. But having a connection to your body is the superpower, because that's when we can recognize, whoa, hold up. My whole body is experiencing stress right now. I'm recognizing it's related to that dog barking. I need to create safety in my body first. And what that looks like is reminding yourself, I am safe. There is no urgency. There is no emergency. What we get to do is breathe. And breathing is such a great way to calm. Think about the last time you were standing on a beach or on a mountaintop, and what did you do? Took in a nice deep breath. That's your parasympathetic nervous system being activated. Your parasympathetic nervous system is being turned on. Your rest and digest and calm autonomic nervous system twin of sympathetic. The way we activate parasympathetic nervous system is we take a deep breath and exhale fully, just like you would on that mountaintop. And here's the secret. Make the exhale longer than the inhale. Now, this is just one way to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, but in that moment, we get to do that, right? And one of my favorite ways to do this is close my eyes and take a breath, because then I block out all the extra stimulus. Then we get to recognize the thought. What is the thought that was the next component, the next in the cascade subsequent to the feeling? Because our feelings indicate our thoughts, and our thoughts indicate our feelings. And our feelings feed our thoughts, and our thoughts feed our feelings. Right? When you feel uncomfortable, you start thinking uncomfortable thoughts. When you're thinking wonderful, excited, empowered thoughts, you start feeling wonderful, empowered feelings. I mean, that's the core of what I say at the end of every episode. When you feel good, you can do good, because when you feel good in your body, you think good thoughts, and then you act on good thoughts. It's this beautiful feedback loop, because when we act on good thoughts and good feelings, we get good response, which feeds our good thoughts. But in the moment when we're feeling that stress or anxiety or just recognizing sadness, anger, doesn't matter what the feeling is in your body, we get to ask ourselves, oh my gosh, what was the thought I just had? My thought is there's an emergency. Now we have a place we can start. We've calmed our bodies down by taking a deep breath. And now we get to focus on the thought. There is no emergency. I am safe. And now we get to feed ourselves the thought that we need to think in order to have the outcome that we need to have or that we desire. I am safe. The dogs are safe. There is no urgency. Everything is fine. Now, that component of calming the body and then reassuring the mind is such a magical cocktail in order for us to live a life that is not tethered or imprisoned by our past. It is literally the cheat code for healing. And there's some things that we can do to embed that a little bit deeper in our bodies. One of my favorite things is EFT tapping, emotional freedom tapping. If you'll hear the name, emotional freedom tapping. So we're literally tapping on our body in certain very specific places to bring safety and calm to our bodies. It works so well. So just like the past doesn't have to be a prisoner of your story. You don't have to be that wounded little girl. You don't have to be that fearful resident for the rest of your life, reacting constantly to certain cadence sounds. So we don't have to be prisoners to our thoughts. See, our thoughts are optional. And I know that sounds so outrageous, but it's the truth. Our thoughts are optional at any point in the day. What it takes is recognizing it. It takes the awareness of it. So here we're recognizing, I need awareness of my body, awareness of my emotions, awareness of my thoughts. Now you see why I say awareness is a superpower. My mind is saying, let's just end the pain and take action because there's an emergency. Let the dogs in. But I say, everything is fine. The dog is just talking in dog talk. It's raining. The dog is getting wet. And he's just asking to come out of the rain. But right now, I'm choosing to let him stay out there to pee outside instead of peeing inside. And there is no problem. Sometimes we just need that little extra support to remind our nervous system that we are safe. See, your body is so incredible. It's actually doing every single thing it should. It's actually working to protect you. Your body is designed to protect you. And if it learned at one point that something was a threat to your safety, your livelihood, it's going to keep that memory until you teach it something new. And this is the miracle of the incredible work that I do, which I feel so honored, by the way, to be doing this for all of my incredible colleagues, is to allow them to step beyond that story, beyond that old pattern. We think, that's just the way I am. That's just who I am. I get stressed out with noises. Or that's just who I am. When XYZ happens, I react in this way. That's just who I am. And we think we have to start eliminating things in our environment. Well, then let me just not have dogs, which is fine. I hold no judgment against anybody who doesn't have a dog. But how many things do you want to strip out of your life so that you can stay in this teeny tiny comfort zone of your identity? I mean, if we look at it that way, essentially the longer you live, the narrower and smaller and tinier your world gets to become. Because there is no such thing as not experiencing pain. It's going to happen, even in adulthood. And if the more pain happens, simply because you're living longer, are we going to eliminate the opportunity for things to hurt us more and more and more till we're living in this tiny little world all of our own with no one around us and no one to talk to and no dogs, no rain, no discomfort, just sitting in a chair. Can you see how detrimental that is to thriving? That's not living a life. That's called keeping yourself safe all the time, but that's not where happiness lives. See, your mind is not designed for enormous happiness. Your mind is designed to keep you alive. That's it. Your body's doing exactly as it should. But as an intellectual, conscious being with awareness and dreams, we get to choose differently. So at this point, I want to also let you know that all of this work is exactly what I do in Radical Happiness for Practitioners. I mean, this is just touching the very tip of the iceberg, but we go deep into practices that you can use for yourself. I mean, my goal at the end of Radical Happiness is that you have everything you need to live the life of your dreams. You have all these practices to support yourself. It's the most incredible, it's the most incredible course ever. And enrollment is now open for January of 2024. I'm so excited. I cannot wait to be welcoming a whole new group of incredible women into my program. It really changes your life, and I don't say that facetiously. I don't say that lightly. Our enrollment is open until January 15th. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is when enrollment closes for Radical Happiness for Practitioners. So I'm going to leave a link in the show notes, and you can check it out on my website, www.thebizofhappiness.com. Check out Radical Happiness if you're interested. I would love to jump on a call with you, 15 minutes, not a long call, just to see if that's something that would be good for you. And perhaps 2024 is the year that you step outside of the limitations of your past, that you recognize that your past does not have to be your prisoner. In fact, you are so capable of living a life of radical happiness, even in medicine and dentistry. And I'm here to support you. And remember, when you feel good, that is when you can do good. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Business of Happiness podcast. If this episode brought you new perspective and value, I invite you to subscribe so that you catch all upcoming episodes and leave us a review. And if you know of a friend or colleague who could benefit from this perspective, share this episode with them and empower their day. For more information about the Business of Happiness and the Radical Happiness for Practitioners course, find me on www.thebizofhappiness.com. See you there.